Okay, so we all know that feeling, right? You settle in for movie night, scroll through a million options, and you're just paralyzed by indecision.
Too many
It
choices.
happens to the best of us. But tonight, we're diving deep into a film that you need on your radar, Battle on Buka Street. It's this record-breaking Nollywood film, and it's been getting a ton of buzz. In fact, you sent in a review from Movie Ticket Films Review
Oh, great app.
to get the inside scoop, so let's dig in.
Sounds delicious already. And you've definitely come to the right place for this. This film, it's so much more than just a movie, you know. It's like a window into Nigerian culture, exploring all these complex family dynamics and societal pressures. And of course, there's all this amazing food.
The title itself, Battle on Buka Street, I mean, it definitely grabbed my attention. The review kept mentioning these bukas. Can you give us a little background on what those are?
Sure. A buka is basically like a local eatery, kind of like a street food stall, you
Yeah.
know, and they're super popular in Nigeria, serving up all sorts of dishes. Think of it as this vibrant, bustling hub where people come together not just for the food, but to like connect with each other.
Ah, so it's a whole cultural experience. It's not just about grabbing a bite.
Exact.
And in this film, we have two half-sisters, Awele and Yeji, who inherit their mother's rival bukas, along with their decades-old feud. This isn't just like your typical sibling rivalry.
Oh, not at all. I mean, sure, the film has its funny moments, but this rivalry between Awele and Gigi that goes way deeper. It's really a reflection of, you know, the pressure to live up to family legacies, the competition for economic survival, and also the weight of cultural expectations, especially for women in Nigerian society.
Now, family dramas aren't usually my go-to genre, but the fact that this film managed to out-earn even Avatar, The Way of Water at the Nigerian box office, that's definitely got my attention. So how did this movie become such a phenomenon?
Well, I think you have to understand that Nollywood, the Nigerian film industry, it's enormous. It produces a massive amount of films every year. And Battle on Buka Street, this film brought in, get this, a record-breaking 668 million,
Wow.
which is over 1.5 million US dollars, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think its success is more than just numbers, right? I think it really resonates with people because it tackles these universal themes of family, ambition, tradition, and how to sort of navigate all of that in a world that's constantly changing.
The review called it a five-star Nollywood blockbuster and gave a lot of praise to the directors, Funke Akindele, who also happens to play Yajid, and Tobi Makinde, for their storytelling. And from what I've read, it sounds like they really managed to blend humor, heart, and this really cool cultural insight.
They did a phenomenal job, and I think a big part of their success is how they portray these family relationships,
Yeah.
right? It's not just a black and white good versus evil kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
You know, Ali and Yeji, they're both flawed characters, they're ambitious, and they're driven by a mix of love, resentment, and this need to succeed.
It's interesting that they chose food as the battleground for this rivalry. The review mentions these really vivid scenes of bustling street markets, all the colors, and of course all those delicious dishes.
Food, it's such a huge part of Nigerian culture.
Mm.
And in this film, it's not just there in the background, it's symbolic.
Yeah.
You know, it's a symbol of tradition, of competition, and even a potential source of connection. I mean, think about it. We've all bonded over a shared meal at some point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But in this case, food also represents, you know, the sisters' struggles to define themselves, to create their own identities within the context of their family legacies, which they've kind of inherited whether they want to or not.
It sounds like there are a lot of layers to unpack here in terms of the characters' individual journeys and also this broader social commentary that's woven into the story. The review mentioned jollof rice, which I've heard is like a staple dish in Nigeria. Can you tell us a little more about that and how it fits into the film?
Oh, jollof rice. It's more than just a dish. It's almost like a national treasure in Nigeria. It's this incredibly flavorful rice dish made with tomatoes, onions, peppers, spices. And what's really interesting is that each region has its own unique way of making it, which leads to all these, you know, friendly rivalries about whose recipe is the best.
So it's a source of pride and even a little bit of playful competition, kind of like Awele and Yejid's rivalry, right? I'm starting to see how the film uses food as a metaphor for something much bigger.
Exactly. And this rivalry, it goes beyond the food itself. It's about their mothers, their upbringing, their own ambitions for the future. And it kind of makes you wonder how much of their rivalry is genuine animosity and how much is just them playing out these roles they've inherited.
Now you've got me really curious about the roots of their feud. The review mentions sabotage and traps, which honestly sounds pretty entertaining. But what led to this level of animosity between the sisters?
Well, to understand that, we have to go back to the source. Well, to understand that, we have to go back to, the source of their mother's rivalry. The film uses these flashbacks to show us how it all began, like even before Owen and Yajid were born.
Oh, so it's like they were practically raised on a battlefield of like food and feuds.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did the review give any hints about like what sparked this whole thing between their mothers?
Well, it seems like a whole mix of things, professional jealousy, maybe a little romantic rivalry sprinkled in there, and definitely some clashing personalities. That classic recipe for disaster just simmering over time.
Speaking of recipes for disaster, the review did mention one of the mothers felt like she was cheated out of a local cooking competition. That's gotta sting.
Oh, yeah, definitely adds fuel to the fire.
So they grow up seeing this constant bickering, this one-upmanship. No wonder Owell and Yiji just continue the tradition, right?
Yeah, it's like they inherited this rivalry. Like it's a spice that's infused into everything they do, every interaction. And the film does a really good job of showing how this early exposure to conflict really shapes how they view family, success, even their own self-worth.
That's a good point. It's one thing to see the rivalry on the surface, but to see how it gets into their identity, that's deeper for sure.
Right. And that's where I think the brilliance of this film lies. It takes these heavier themes, these emotional things, and it blends them with these genuinely funny moments. You get an experience that's both entertaining and makes you think.
So it's not all doom and gloom then.
Oh, definitely not.
The review talked about some pretty hilarious scenes with sabotage and traps, all that good stuff.
Oh, absolutely. There's this one scene, it's really funny, where Yajid, she wants to, outshine Awel, so she hires a popular musician to play at her buka, hoping to attract more customers.
I can only imagine the chaos that ensues from that. How does Awel react to that?
Awel, she's not one to back down from a challenge. So what does she do? She retaliates by, get this, spreading a rumor that Yajid is using, well, let's just say questionable ingredients.
Ooh, that's a low blow. But I gotta admit, pretty clever in the context of a food rivalry.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
They're both willing to pull out all the stops to win.
Yeah.
And while those scenes are really funny, the film never lets you forget that there are real emotions at stake here.
Right.
It kind of subtly shows the damage this rivalry does to their relationships, their families, and in the end, to themselves.
It's like a reminder, even when the rivalry is played out in a comedic way, it can still have some serious consequences.
Exactly. You see these hilarious schemes, but underneath, there's this undercurrent of sadness, this weight that they carry from this inherited conflict.
And you mentioned earlier that message of forgiveness and reconciliation.
Yeah.
How does that come through? Do Awel and Yejid ever, bury the hatchet?
Well, I don't want to spoil the ending for everyone.
Okay, fair enough.
But let's just say that a few unexpected events happen, and they're kind of forced to face what they've done. It makes them rethink what really matters in the end.
Ooh, now you've really got me hooked. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about those cultural details that make this film so unique. The review was raving about the depiction of Nigerian street life, the energy, the food culture. What were some specific details that stood out to you?
For one, the way they show the preparation and the joy of eating jollof rice, it really highlights how important it is culturally. We see them carefully choosing ingredients, the whole community preparing it together, the pure happiness people get from eating it. It's visually beautiful, showing how food can be this unifying force.
Which makes sense, given you said it's practically a national treasure.
Exactly.
And it's interesting, the film contrasts that community aspect with the rivalry between the sisters. They're taking something that usually brings people together, and they're turning it into a weapon.
Exactly. It adds another layer to their relationship and really digs into those contradictions that exist within Nigerian culture. You mentioned earlier the regional variations of jollof rice.
Right.
Are those highlighted in the film too?
Yeah. Yeah, so we actually see Aweli and Yejid each putting their own spin on their jollof rice recipe, which not only shows their personalities, but also the amazing diversity of culinary traditions across Nigeria. So it's not just a food rivalry, it's like a clash of cultures.
Yeah, definitely.
What other dishes do we see in the film?
Oh, we see fufu, which is this starchy dough that's often served with soups and stews, and suya, a spicy grilled meat skewer that's super popular street food. There's even a scene where Awele and Yeji get into it, arguing about whose suya is more authentic, like the real deal.
Oh, I can just picture that scene. It seems like every detail, from the food to the bustling market, it's all infused with meaning. The film itself is like a feast for the senses.
It really is. And speaking of feasts, we can't forget about the incredible actors who bring this story to life. The review really highlighted Funke Akindele and Mercy Johnson, who play the rival sisters. What were your impressions of their performances?
Well, I've seen Funke Akindele in other Nollywood films, and she's just got this amazing comedic timing and expressive style. She really brings a unique energy and charisma to Yajid, that's for sure. But I'm curious about Mercy Johnson's portrayal of a gull. I've heard she's known for her powerful and dramatic performances.
You're right on the money. And the contrast between their acting styles perfectly reflects the dynamic between the sisters. Yajid is more outgoing, louder, and Awale's more reserved, calculating. But beneath those surface differences, both actresses do this amazing job of showing the vulnerability, the emotional complexity of their characters.
The review also mentioned those veteran actors, Sola Sobowale, Tina Emba, and Inkem Owo. What can you tell us about their roles and how they impact the story?
Well, Sola Sobowale, who you might recognize from the Netflix series King of Boys, she plays Mama Iyachuku, a respected elder in the community.
Ah, Sola Sobowale, she's fantastic. I can already picture her bringing that same, commanding presence to this role. So, what kind of influence does her character have on the story?
Mama Iyachuku, she's like this voice of reason in the middle of all the chaos between Awale and Yajid. She gets it.
Yeah.
She understands the history of the feud, the cultural pressures that are feeding it, and she sees that there's a chance for them to reconcile if they could only let go of the past.
It's like she represents that older generation that's seen this conflict play out over and over again. They must have a lot of wisdom about the real meaning of family and community.
Exactly. And then you have Tina Emba as Mama Awale, Awale's mother.
Oh, right.
And Tina Emba, she's just phenomenal. She brings so much nuance to her roles. What did you think of her performance?
Well, having her play Awela's mother, it just adds another dimension to the story, don't you think? It reinforces that idea of inherited rivalry, like it's ingrained in the family, these patterns of behavior.
You said it perfectly. Mama Willie's presence, it brings this whole history to the rivalry, reminding us that this isn't just a petty squabble, right? It's rooted in years of resentment, unresolved conflict. It goes way back.
And what about Nikim Owo? The review mentioned him as a comedic legend. Where does he fit into all of this?
Nikamowo, he plays Bobby Yajid, Yajid's father, and he brings his much-needed dose of humor and warmth to the film. He represents that possibility of finding joy and connection, even when there's all this conflict going on.
So he brings some balance to the story. You have the drama, the intensity of this rivalry, but also those moments of laughter, the lightness, thanks to characters like Baba Yajid.
Absolutely. And that blend, that mix of humor and heart, that's what makes Battle on Buka Street so engaging, so relatable. Even if you've never experienced Nigerian culture yourself, it just reminds you that families are messy, rivalries can get out of control, and food has this amazing power to bring us together or tear us apart.
I think we've successfully navigated the streets, the food, the family drama of Battle on Buka Street. This deep dive has been really eye-opening. I came in thinking this was just a fun, lighthearted movie, but there's so much more to it.
There really is. It works on so many levels. It's a celebration of Nigerian culture, a hilarious take on sibling rivalry, and a really touching exploration of family and forgiveness. It's got it all.
And now I'm craving jollof rice. I might have to do some research, try making it myself.
Oh, you should. It's delicious.
Okay.
Just remember, a little friendly rivalry in the kitchen can be fun, but try not to let it escalate into a full-blown food fight.
Good advice. And to our listener, if you're looking for a film that'll transport you to a different culture, make you laugh, and make you think about those complicated family dynamics, Battle on Buka Street needs to be on your list.
And who knows, maybe this will even inspire you to check out some more Nollywood films. There's so many amazing stories out there.
That's so true. And with that, we're wrapping up our deep dive into Battle on Buka Street. We hope you enjoyed the journey and maybe even learned a little something about Nigerian culture, family dynamics, and the power of a good food rivalry. Thanks for joining us.